Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Parks, Recreation, and Beaches Advisory Board meeting. This meeting will come to order. Leona, would you like to do a roll call?
Absolutely. Alex Collazo. Brucie Cummings.
Here.
Caleb Gunter. Carrie Villeneuve. Carrie Villeneuve. Your mic is not working? Okay, I see you. Charlie Lykoff.
I'm here.
Deborah Rosenbaum.
I'm here.
Darren Heitner.
Present.
Gail Butler. Joanne Smith. John Holmes. Karen Polifka.
Present.
Mariana Seiler. I just heard someone.
That's me, Mariana.
Oh, Mariana's here. Okay, Mariana Seiler's here. Mary Pelican.
Present.
Mr. Robert Payne. And Tangerine Moore. You do have a quorum, Karen.
Yay. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I've missed you the last month or two. Did everyone receive and review the minutes? Any corrections to the minutes, if so?
I saw no corrections. I moved to approve.
All right. All in favor? Any opposed?
I need a second, Karen.
I'm sorry.
Second. I'll second it. Brucie.
That was Brucie. Thank you, Brucie.
Okay. Any changes? I'm trying to do this without being able to see everybody. Any corrections to the minutes?
No.
Okay. Then I'll say the minutes are approved. Okay, so normally we move to Carl with a department update, but we have Dr. Alan Zeman, who's the chairman of the educational board, on the telephone, and he just has a quick update to give us as a board. Alan, welcome.
Karen, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I hope what I say is as perfect as the audio connection. Thank you for just giving me one quick minute. Zoe Saunders, who's on the call, has done so much to move forward with one of our 3 strategic initiatives from last year, which are being implemented this year. And that's really around this general idea of having joint use parks between city and county, making a good government play for having facilities on school grounds and near schools that are available for students during the school day and available for residents and guests of Fort Lauderdale thereafter. We're terribly excited about the progress that has been made so far. Some of it in, playgrounds that are getting ready to have new ribbon cutting ceremonies, but a lot of them in terms of the hard work between the principals, the district, and Zoe on trying to plan what the local area needs, what the school children and their administrators need. And we're just terribly excited about the progress. We are hopeful that in another couple years, we'll be able to say that Fort Lauderdale has joint use parks everywhere where it makes sense, where the schools run by the county and funded by the county and Parks and Rec of the City of Fort Lauderdale run by the city have worked together to create kind of an end to park desert. So I just wanted to say that I am the linking member from the Education Advisory Board to your board. So I will continue to attend your full meetings. My apologies for tonight. My wife had to go out of town at the last minute, and so I'm actually running to Holiday Park to pick up my kids from gymnastics. And so how ironic that I'm on the parks board running to a park to pick up our children from gymnastics. But Joint Use Park has turned out to be even greater than what we envisioned it to be. And we're terribly excited about the thousands of local residents who will be able to use a park on county property as this comes to fruition. I know Carl and Zoe will talk later about a liaison because we've lost the liaison. But as we come out of, all of the restrictions we have, we feel like there's more work to be done between the Education Advisory Board and the Parks, Recs, and Beach Board. So I will continue to attend your meeting. I'm happy to address any of the issues from an advisory board perspective and to refer questions to Zoe for anything that makes sense from the city's and city staff's kind of perspective. But I just wanted to say hi. I'm glad we're back to meeting, and I will continue to attend to represent this joint use park for at least a year, maybe even 2 years as we pull all the plans together. So thank you for listening to me. And Karen, I appreciate you allowing me to get a quick speech in here for something we're terribly excited about.
Yes, no, we're all excited. You've been doing great work. So thank you so much, and we will talk soon.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, Carl, you ready for the department update?
I am. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Very good to see some of you all. I know it's been quite a long time.
Yeah.
I do have a few things I want to share with the board. As some of you know, we had essentially our first event during COVID, which was the Lauterboo at Snyder Park. It was quite a scene, if any of you all had an opportunity to go by there. But if you haven't, we also have another one that will be this Saturday at Oswald Park from 1 to 5. It's a drive-through event. It's mainly for the younger kids. Candy will be given out, little knickknacks and things of that nature. And it's a really good event to kind of at least bring some kind of leisure event in a safe way. We also, I know the last time we spoke, we discussed the e-learning program. Since that meeting and now we've also opened a after-school portion at 2 of our sites, which is Bass and Riverland Park, that are open now and are available for anyone that needs those after-school services at our facility. Also, on next month, we will not be meeting, but we do have a meeting on December 2nd. So make sure to mark your calendars that our next meeting isn't in November, but it will be on December 2nd. We do have a couple playgrounds that will start to begin some construction at Hort Park, as well as, what's the other park? Hort and Coontehatchee, Lagoon. Those are the 2 sites that we've identified to essentially, especially Coontehatchee, to put a playground there, and then Hort Park to replace the existing structure that's there now. So those are 2 projects that'll be starting fairly soon. And we anticipate those being completed at some point towards the end of this year. My bet would be closer to Christmas time for those projects to be completed. And I know we've mentioned this, I know Alan mentioned it and Zoe as well, but for those who don't know, Mary Steinkamp, she did resign her post with the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, and she's now on our Public Arts and Placemaking Board. And with that said, we started the process of having a liaison from our Parks, Recreation, and Beaches Advisory Board to be a part of the Educational Advisory Board. And so I wanted to mention that and see if anybody was interested in for you all to have that discussion and go from there. And that's my report.
Carl, I'd be interested.
Okay.
Is there any other way to do this? Is anybody else or, I mean, that sounds great, Deborah. Really appreciate it. Do we need to do anything? And Zoe, did you, this is Deborah.
I know Zoe.
Hi, Deborah. I'm thrilled that you'd like to be the liaison. I'd like to schedule some time in the near future so I can update you on our progress and so we can coordinate on this effort. But
Absolutely, Zoe. Absolutely. I think you have my contact information.
I do. I'll reach out to you tomorrow, but thank you so much for volunteering to be part of this.
I'm a huge proponent of education, so absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you.
Wonderful. I just want to, just for some house cleaning, does anybody else was interested in being a part of the Educational Advisory Board, just so that we're fair?
So don't we need to put a motion before and then have everybody vote to make it official?
Who else is interested?
Okay, so I guess go ahead with the motions.
Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion to have Deborah the official liaison with the Educational Board?
This is Charlie. I make a motion to have.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Mary.
Oh, Charlie. No, Charlie, you go. I'll
You
second.
go. No, that's okay. You go ahead. You're there.
I shall make the motion that Deborah be the liaison for the Education Board.
Second.
The chart. I second it. You're killing me.
I beat you, Charlie.
So any
All those
opposed? No opposed. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Karen, for record purposes, I'll go through the roll call.
Okay, perfect. I'm sorry, after not seeing you guys for 2 months, I can't remember all of the steps I'm supposed to do. I'm brain dead on running this meeting. I apologize. Go ahead, Leona.
Alex Collazo. Brucie Cummings.
Yes.
Caleb Gunter. Carrie Villeneuve.
Yes. Did you hear
Charlie
that?
Lykoff.
Yes.
Deborah Rosenbaum.
Yes.
Darren Heitner.
Yes.
Gail Butler. Joanne Smith. John Holmes. Karen Polifka.
Yes, I approve.
Mariana Seiler.
I approve.
Mary Pelican.
Yes.
Robert Payne. Tangerine Moore. Okay, motion carries.
Motion carries. Congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Carl, anything else to add?
No, that's it for me.
Okay, so next up, Parks Bond update. Big news. Phil or Joe, do we know who's speaking?
So this is Phil. Good evening, everyone. I'll lead it off and then I'll let Joe speak as well. I do want to mention one thing. Carl mentioned at the next meeting on the 2nd of December for the board, and I would just advise the board at this time. My guess is that that's going to be in person. So probably downstairs in the chambers, they started to set that up. So the social distancing will be in effect and all that kind of stuff. But I would just, everyone be prepared unless something drastic changes, hopefully not for the worst. The idea is that the December 2nd meeting will be in person at City Hall.
Phil, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I may be out of town. Am I able to attend that meeting telephonically or via Zoom?
We're going to be sharing the how that virtual or call-in works. There's like 3 or 4 stipulations that if you fall into, you can request to the board that they allow you to listen in, and if you want to vote on an item, and then the board would then make that determination on whether they believe it meets the criteria, and also if they want to allow that to happen. So we'll get that out. Elaine will send that out in the next few weeks prior to this meeting, just so you'll know.
Yeah, because I'm able to attend, but I'm not able to attend in person.
Right, but the way the charter and the statutes read, you really need to be in person. If you're going to, you can listen in, but if you're going to vote on anything and be part of the quorum, you have to meet the criteria to do it telephonically. So again, I'll have Leona will send that out so everybody will see what that is. But you'll have that in plenty of time. So if it's you or anyone else in that meeting or any other meetings to come, you'll know how that works. Okay, so I just wanted to bring to the board, I sent out kind of a memorandum that came from Joe Webb, and Joe will speak in a little bit. Joe is our lead program manager for the Parks Bond, and as many of you already know, I've mentioned AECOM and I've mentioned Joe a few times. So he's on board now with his company, and they've been doing a lot of work up till now, and they have a lot of work to do in the next 4 to 5 years. So you got the memo that he sent me as well as the project timeline, which kind of shows how they're going to roll everything out. And again, the idea is to hopefully have this done within 4 to 5 years maximum. It's a lot of work to do, but they're a big company. They're very specialized in this business, and they can really hit the ground running. And that's one of the good things about bringing them on, is they can do a lot of stuff and get this going. So one thing I did want to mention, if you look at the project schedule, they're going to be doing a lot of the outreach over the next 2 to 3 months. And a lot of that's going to be virtual. So we kind of shifted from in person to virtual because of COVID, but I think it's also going to give a lot more availability to those that may not be able to make it to a meeting, or for whatever reason, or don't come to meetings in person, where they can still give their input on virtually and on their website through these rooms that Joe can talk about if he'd like to. But so that's going to be happening. And then as you look at the schedule, as you go into February, March of next year, then that's probably when the board will start seeing some of the projects coming to you all. So once they get the feedback, they'll start to synthesize that and decide kind of what they want to start working on first. And then they'll do it in phases. They're, I think, looking at 4 phases at this point. So the first phase will really take off. They'll start to design those phases. And once they get to about 30%, which is kind of what you saw with the 2 parks we brought earlier, with a site plan and kind of what the conceptual ideas it's going to happen at the park through the input of the community. And that's when it would come to the board. And then it would eventually then go to the commission as a public hearing, which is part of our bond requirements as well, right after that. And then once that goes to the public hearing is done, then AECOM will start to do the construction drawings, the bidding process, and actually start digging holes in the ground and building the parks out. So I'll kind of leave it at that. I'll listen in with Joe. If there's any questions of me, I do have to hop off at 7 for a meeting with the city manager, but as soon as that's over, I'll get right back on if you're still around. So let Joe Webb talk for a little bit from AECOM and introduce himself to the board, and I'll be around for questions. Thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Phil. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Again, thank you, Phil, and very happy to be here. My name is Joe Webb. I'm with the company AECOM. I also have my staff on the line, Drew Crumpton. It's John Drew Crumpton and Maria Rivera. part of a very large team of AECOM people and sub-consultants that are dedicated to this project. As Phil mentioned, we're a large firm, but we also have a large team really dedicated to trying to bring this program to fruition expeditiously, but also careful to make sure that we're listening to the public and engaging with you and the board and making sound decisions. So, you know, our efforts are always very coordinated, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening, meeting all of you, I guess virtually, perhaps soon in person. As Phil mentioned, this is a large program, 97 projects. It will take time to, you know, plan, design, permit, construct these items. We have an ambitious schedule of basically 4 phases that we hope to complete over the next 5 plus or minus years, foregoing any unforeseen circumstances. Our team, and really at this point, are very focused on what Phil referred to as the virtual meetings coming up. We have, at AECOM, we use what we call a virtual room, which we're creating to basically replicate the full experience of being in a room, providing people with the opportunity to give input. We use this globally as a tool. And I will say it does, as Phil referenced, provide a lot more opportunity for busy people. You know, fixed time, fixed place meetings are always difficult. So we're trying very much to make it as engaging as possible for people to visit those virtual rooms. And, well, first be aware and campaign of advertising those opportunities, reaching out to people. But our efforts are going to be focused, you know, we recognize the work that was done in the 2016 master plan, which laid out at least an initial list of programmatic elements or improvement needs. Certainly since 2016, it's valid to come back and re-verify those with the public and all of you and make sure that those are still the right priorities, still the things that we should be working on. With that input, we would then, as Phil mentioned, create plans, identifying what the community has expressed as their needs and priorities, and really, with the concurrence of this board and the city commission, move forward to planning or to design and engineering and construction. So that's kind of the overview. You know, whenever dealing with this many projects, it sometimes isn't as easy as it seems. There's always some certain things that come up, but I think we have our arms around most of the risks or things that we might encounter along the way. So we'll be proceeding, but it does come down, as the memo I think Phil shared with you said, it still comes down to 20 to 25 projects going on at any one phase. Phases overlap. That could be 50 projects at any one time. You know, a spending rate of $40 to $50 million a year once it's in full design and construction. So it's certainly a large program. AECOM is a firm familiar with doing that. So the program will go forward. We're going to try and keep as much as possible the information open, transparent, and inclusive on the website so people can track what we're doing as we go through the program. And hopefully, as we continue to cut ribbons and provide much needed facilities to the city. So that's kind of my, I don't know, 3-minute elevator speech. It's a long elevator ride. But I'm also happy to answer any questions. I'm sure this is the first time we've talked.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Karen.
I'm the chair. I do want to remind the board members that underneath the participants icon, I think it's at the bottom of the screen, you have the ability to raise your hand, so I can call everybody one at a time. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Joe. I just wanted to remind everybody if they had a question to raise their hand. Anybody?
Certainly not interrupting, Karen.
Carrie? No, there we go. Carrie. Villeneuve.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So in looking at the summary project schedule, can you just talk a little bit specifically as to the signature project? So I know that there's 4 signature projects. I know Lockhart's pretty much done. Tunnel Top seems to be designed, but I assume that, you know, it still needs building, obviously. And then Carter and Holiday, I think, really nothing's been done yet on those 2. You know, this summary project schedule seems to be for the entire Parks Bond, but my understanding is that the 4 signature are supposed to be the right off the bat ones. So just, I guess, mainly Carter and Holiday. Is it the same timing, or are they the phase 1 timing? How do you see those developing?
Yeah, and I will speak to all 4. I believe Tunnel Top is just a cooperative effort with the FDOT, which makes sense. But Lockhart, Carter, and Holiday are the signature projects. The intent is that those be in the first phase as much as possible. You know, what we want to do, though, is, you know, also include in that first phase some perhaps more straightforward projects. They're going to be complicated and may take more time, and we want to make sure that we're also going to be working on things that maybe come to fruition a little quicker. We are, as Phil knows, trying to get as far ahead on Carter, Holiday, and Lockhart as possible. In other words, we are going to be responsive to the community need for what improvements and what's built, but we're trying to get ahead with all of the geotechnical, the surveying, the what I call site planning right now, to make sure that the day there's a decision on a program for the park, we can move quickly with those. But to answer your question directly, yeah, those are intended for the first phase, but we also recognize those may be some of the more complicated big projects that take time. So we'll want to also try and balance that with things that we may be able to deliver quicker, you know, so that the community doesn't have to wait for those 3 to get done before we go on to other stuff. So does that make sense?
One more,
answer your question?
That does. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one more quick follow-up question to that. Of the 4, and I think of all of them, I think Holiday Park probably presents the biggest challenge because you have so many different players there between YMCA, Panthers, the theater, sports programs. There's a lot of different stuff going on there, and the park, you know, is slated for a very large overhaul, parking garage, a lot going on there. Will it have its own dedicated team that's focused just on Holiday Park, like a subgroup of your team that's all they do, or will it just be handled by the overall team?
Well, and as a program for a design team, we actually have 2 full teams that will be working on all 4 projects, but there is actually a dedicated team for Holiday. I'm actually very familiar with them. I was also the head of the project for the park system master plan. So I have been to Holiday Park many times. You're right. It is one of the more complicated ones. I think it's actually, it actually makes a lot of sense. All the things that are being brought forth from it. We certainly did hear from a lot of those stakeholders. The park system master plan had a lot of outreach, a lot of focus groups and stakeholder group engagement. So we're not cold to the things that people are looking for. But as you're probably aware, sometimes when there's that many stakeholders, it's also a matter of compromise and priority, and making sure that the whole thing comes together into one beautiful park, which I think we all would like to have too. So we do have as our intent, and as we tailor to certain of the projects, you know, Carter Park may have more of an architectural team. If there's going to be significant building renovations or relocations. Holiday, I do have a dedicated team to really lead that one because it is probably one of the biggest efforts. Again, another team that's really leading up Lockhart. So we're targeting those heavily with larger kind of sub-teams, but we're fortunate, to have a very big team that can handle many different projects at the same time. And, I think putting the best people based on the types of work at each one is kind of our strategy. So.
Anyone else? Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. I do have a question. How will you address the community regarding the future projects and what they desire? And this is mainly for my pickleball people who keep reaching out to me. I'm sure you've heard about that. And, we're trying to chip away where the best place to add, I don't know, 6, 8 courts, whatever it is that they're seeking. How do you go about prioritizing what the community wants?
Well, and first off, I have to laugh at pickleball because, I've been to communities where it's a crisis. It's a crisis. In the middle of a pandemic, people are referring to it as a crisis, but we certainly do hear a lot. We do hear a lot from the pickleball community, very appreciative of the sport. I think it's great fun and wonderful social event. Really, we're going to look to the community to try and drive the priority. So not only are we going to ask needs and wants, we're going to ask people through the process to prioritize. What are the most important elements to each, as we go down the list, because it's one thing to say, what do you want, and have everybody raise your hand and get 150 things, but we have to be realistic of, through the community consensus, is there a priority? I would imagine pickleball is going to come to it. Everywhere we go, every project I've worked on in the last 5 years, it is a high priority. Lots of people are very interested in the sport. We're building, 38 of them, I think, currently in different places across the state right now. So we're really hoping that the community helps us to prioritize. And I think I want to say the community in conjunction with, consultation with you. Some things are easier like pickleball, but some might come down to more of a decision of, do we keep crowding in every last thing that people put in, or do we actually speak to preserving open space, which is sometimes, and I joke with Phil, rarely do I get from the community that, my top priority is replacing an 8-inch force main for sanitary sewer. Some things we have to do. There's also priorities for access, and those are required things for us to do, things we're obligated and feel passionate should be included. So it's really about the things that we can choose to do and the things we have to do.
Well, I guess my question is, how are you going to be approaching the community? How will they be able to share their opinions and get votes in? How will that happen?
Okay. Each one, and you'll see at some point here, each one within the room will be descriptions of the project, a plan of the park with proposed improvements as they were last left in 2016, a opportunity to give direct input on your needs, wants, and priorities.
Okay.
We then consolidate those through publicinput.com, put that together into matrices of priorities, and compare that to criteria for what we must do. And really, it's all driven by directly within that room. People can go on and tell us.
So it'll be per project, kind of like, I think we did that for DC Alexander. Carl, I can't remember. We always had meetings over at the Beach Community Center. So it'll be per project where the community is invited and they get to vote and things like that. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
the and we ask, and I mean, we've gone this far, but I mean, we ask questions of what should we do now? What should we do later? What's most important? Again, depending on the words, people respond differently. Mm-hmm. And so we really try to narrow it down to what we can ascertain as the consensus of top priorities.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to also mention that's also, part of the conversation, because Karen and I we've been on quite a few emails about pickleball over the last few weeks, and so as this board remembers, quite some time ago we engaged the thought of pickleball at George English, and part of what Joe and his team will be looking at is also assessing the area, getting that feedback, and then prioritizing and making at that point for that specific part as well. And so we know pickleball is a high priority item thus far, at least from the comments that we've received. And we'll work to get feedback community on that, and so we can move forward.
So is it still an option where the pickleball courts that were originally discussed at George English, is that that's still an opportunity if that's what the community decides to vote on?
Absolutely.
Okay, I didn't realize
Yeah.
that. Carrie, is your hand still up or is it up again? I'm sorry.
I re-raised it just to say something real quickly.
Okay, all right.
Look, I'm going to start this off by saying I love playing pickleball. I love pickleball. But I do think as a board, we need to be cognizant that, something like pickleball is a very organized community. But we can't think that just because they're highly organized, that people who are less organized are in some way less deserving or less needing. I mean, for example, the playground at Holiday Park it's unusable. But parents who's organizing all the parents to say like, hey, we need obviously we know that the playgrounds can be replaced. And actually when the Parks Bond passed, a signature, playground was part of the commissioner's memo, the city manager's memo in passing it. So we know that's going to happen, but I just don't want, we've talked about the pickleball thing a lot. And I just don't want us to think that just because pickleball is super organized, that needs to drive our whole focus. It's a popular sport. I love it. They deserve some more courts, but I don't want us to think that just the loudest, most organized group deserves all the attention, where there's lots of other groups of people who just aren't as organized. But I can guarantee you there's more parents of young kids that want that splash pad that is in the city manager's memo for Holiday Park and want that playground than there are pickleball people. Those parents just aren't that organized. They're running around tracing their little kids trying to do virtual schooling, and no one's organizing them. So I love pickleball. I'm not trying to talk bad about pickleball. I don't want us to it's just come up so many times that these people came to us and now we got to find this solution, one of which was building a stadium in the middle of Holiday Park, when one of the biggest feedbacks when the Parks Bond was the issue was that people want Holiday Park to cease being just an event venue, just a commuter sports park, and truly become Fort Lauderdale's Central Park. And one of the biggest things you'll see when you go to Central Park is, yes, they have active sports venues, but they also have a lot of passive space and passive equipment. Like, for example, the splash pad in the city manager's memo, a big, beautiful playground like you would see at the place in Boca, Sugar Sands in Boca, big open grass fields with shade for people to hang out. We can't just turn Holiday Park into just more of a commuter sports venue and not a true also community park just because some of the groups that want bigger sports venues happen to be more organized.
No, Carrie, I think that's a good and fair point. I think, Joe kind of mentioned it earlier, as part of kind of what him and his team's role is going to be reaching out and getting feedback from the actual users. And I think that's going to guide how this works. Once that feedback is presented, then, that's when the board then becomes activated. And then that's when decisions are then made. And so all of that stuff, there's a process associated to it. Just because, we get 200 emails a week just on pickleball doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to turn into Holiday Pickleball Park.
I understand. I just want to speak up for all the less organized people. And I think in that regard, whenever, Joe was saying that the starting point is the 2016 master plan, I think for Holiday Park, the starting point needs to be the 2016 master plan as amended by the city manager's memo that was attached to the bond that actually passed, because that city manager's memo outlines several specific projects for Holiday Park that were promised to the Victoria Park and surrounding areas as an inducement to vote for that bond, because there was massive opposition to that bond, because all Holiday Park was originally getting was replacing ACs and repainting some surfaces and a $10 million parking garage. And people were vitriolically upset until that city manager's memo, and Steve Glassman fought so hard for it to get a splash pad, a signature playground like Sugar Sands, an improved walking, jogging trail, like those type of things. So I just think it's important that from the very beginning for Holiday Park, we recognize that the starting point can't just be the 2016 master plan. It's got to be the 2016 master plan as amended by the city manager's memo that's attached to the final vote of the passage of the bond, which I'm happy to circulate to whoever needs it. Thanks.
Carrie, so there's so much more beyond that. First of all, the pickleball people are not requesting space at Holiday Park. I mean, if they get courts there, I think that they'd be thrilled, but the discussion has mainly been about George English, and you cannot ignore the fact that they have petitions with over 200 people signed. We get pictures sent us. There's so much more that goes on that the board doesn't see. I have people stopping me in the grocery store, in the parking lot, out front of my house. I'm not kidding. They pull up to talk about pickleball. So you can't ignore when they're sending pictures of the long lines of people waiting and petitions signed with over 200 people. I mean, if that's what the demand is with that many people, then it is going to take a priority over the playground. But only the people at the playground also have the ability to talk. That's why I wanted to know how they can present their desire. That's why Joe's clarifying having a community meeting and having everybody vote. So that's what the communities let their told that they can come and vote and discuss the options. And we've had great turnouts at the Beach Community Center. So I'm hoping that will happen for all aspects of the park. And that's just, there's a lot more going on with pickleball than I think everybody realizes. There's a lot more going on with pickleball than I think everybody realizes. Anybody else, any hands, or Carl?
No, I actually think you hit the nail on the head there. As the chair mentioned, there's a lot of conversation, and we can't deny that there is a demand. I believe Phil may have sent Joe some thoughts about pursuing some land acquisition for pickleball, and so the idea is that we look at that, but it really begins with the 2016 master plan. But as kind of Carrie alluded to, there's so much that's going to be as far as the process of when things kind of get to the point where a decision will be made. And so the 2016 master plans start, then there's the community outreach. Once the community outreach provides their priorities, those priorities come to the board. The board then makes their recommendations to commission, and then once commission weighs in and gives the yes, then AECOM and Joe, they move forward.
I do have a question on this sliding scale. Where does the community find this to see where we are on the bond progress? You know what I'm talking about? How the running, where all the money is deducted. Where can the public find this?
Oh, okay. So I think that is the one Leona created.
Yes.
But Joe and his team, they'll have a landing page where the actual progress of bond stuff will go forward. But I don't want to speak for Joe.
Okay. Where can the public find that, Joe? We can't hear you. Joe, you're muted.
Yep, bear with me one. You hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, it is. We're creating a dashboard. It's in process. We're hoping to have it done by the end of the week. We have a few little tweaks that we're still working on, but that essentially what Leona created, we're trying to replicate as like a dashboard on the landing page of the website, so that people can track where are you in this process. Obviously, not too far right now, but basically we use Leona's information as the guide to developing that for the main web page that everyone will be directed to.
Okay. Perfect. Any other questions for Joe? No? Okay. All right, then I'll move on to the board comments. First, I'd like to welcome our new member, Darren Heitner. Did I say your name properly, Darren?
Yes, I think you actually introduced me last time.
Yeah, okay, well, you know what? We had a new gentleman that was coming, John Holmes. So then I
But
started,
thanks again.
I started second guessing. I don't remember when that was. So, all right. Anybody want to bring up old business? Any other questions from the board? Comments?
Right?
Karen,
Yes, ma'am.
it's Brucie.
Hi, Brucie.
Hey, I want to follow up with what we were talking about with Holiday Park.
Okay.
Is that okay? I've got people really upset about the fact that it seems that the Panthers are taking over a lot more of the park than people thought originally. And maybe a little clarification for the public would really help. I mean, I know that right now they're in court because they're, what'd you say? I'm sorry. They're right now, the city, I believe, is in court. There are neighbors that have taken them to court because of certain opinions about the Panthers and their not being a nonprofit. That's the argument anyway. People are very upset and they don't want to see Holiday Park just get given to outside sources and that they lose the thing that they love, which is the open space. Could we talk a little bit about that?
Carl?
Yes. Hi, Brucie.
Hi, Carl.
So what's interesting about your inquiry is that I was actually had a lengthy discussion with the gentleman today regarding that. And so to answer your question directly, so there's been no discussion that I'm aware of the Panthers taking anything over more than the War Memorial Auditorium and those plans that they presented to the board in the past. So
Just the auditorium. They're not going to be building another rink and adding another facility?
No, they're only using the auditorium and the build out of the rinks that are inside that abut the pickleball courts at Holiday Park. So they're not taking over anything more than what was discussed with the board originally.
But to clarify, on the north side of the War Memorial building, aren't they putting a rink for the public? And on the south side of War Memorial, it will be where the Panthers actually practice. So there are going to be two rinks, correct?
That is correct.
Right.
That sounds like additional because I thought there was supposed to be a rink inside Memorial Park. I mean, the War Memorial.
They're both inside the War Memorial. They're just adding them on, like it's an add-on.
Yeah, but what originally, when you guys brought this up to us 2 years ago or close, you said, how do you think War Memorial should be used? Do you think a skating rink would be a good idea inside the War Memorial? And at that point, we all thought, well, that's an interesting idea. Well, now all of a sudden, it's not just inside, it's outside in not just one building, but two buildings. And people are really upset about it.
As far as I know, outside of what Sean discussed with us a couple months ago, that's what the plans are. And there isn't any other discussion that I'm aware of where they're taking over additional real estate in the park.
Yeah, but what she's saying is that originally the idea was to put the rink.
Brucie, if you're finished, Charlie's up next, just so you know, Carrie. Sorry. Brucie, did you finish?
All right, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I'm.
Okay, Charlie? Are you muted, Charlie?
I guess raising my hand, and I also need to unmute my phone.
Oh, okay.
As I was saying so quietly, if you go back and check the original site plan that they provided us, it does encompass the original War Memorial Auditorium plus some additional structures in order to provide what they need for that building. The site plan depicts exactly what you're doing. As far as I know, they're not going beyond the original site plan that was presented to us. Whether you recall that, or we need to redistribute that site plan. As far as I know, it hasn't changed since the last time we were presented the site plan.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, if I remember, an ice rink discussed way back. I think that was around the holidays. Maybe when we were discussing where to put the rink, it ended up downtown, the kind of pop-up rink, for lack of better terms. But as far as the floor plan for the Panthers, I always understood it as one side was for the public and the other side was strictly for Panthers. And we have that, Brucie, if you need to see the floor plan.
Yeah, the War Memorial Auditorium, the basic structure is going to stay, but there's going to be some add-ons or additions to the actual physical structure to accommodate the expansion or whatever's going to be done for the Panthers. There's just no way that War Memorial Auditorium could handle the 2 ice rinks and all that under that one old structure that's there. It's definitely got to be expanded. And I think, Carrie, if I remember correctly, it is adjacent to the pickleball courts, but you're not losing anything as far as the pickleball courts go. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a little bit of talking past each other and confusion. What Brucie is saying is that originally, when the original idea of should the city engage with talking to the Panthers, the idea was the Panthers putting an ice rink inside War Memorial. Now that when Panthers actually came forward with their actual plan, that was not the plan. There's no ice rink going in War Memorial. There's an additional structure that will attach to War Memorial being built that spans the distance from War Memorial to the pickleball courts. But Brucie wasn't at that meeting when Panthers came and made that presentation, so she didn't see that. But to her point, a lot of people the public in general, often, a lot of people I talk to, I guess anecdotally, did have the impression that there was going to be an ice rink inside War Memorial. I do think that it is a little bit of a surprise to a lot of people just how much physical space is being taken up by this new building that will hold the 2 rinks. You're not going to lose any pickleball courts. I think the thing that Brucie's concerned about, and a lot of the concerns she's expressing, is you are going to lose a lot of the just kind of open space. And I think there's a lot of concern about those pine trees. Personally, I hate pine trees because they kill the grass, but I know some people do like pine trees. And where there's going to be an ancillary parking spot for the players, like the public is going to park at the garage over by the theater, but there will be a private parking lot for the players, which is immediately south of War Memorial and the new building, which again will obviously impede part of what is now that walking jogging trail area. And that's the concern that I believe Brucie is expressing, and why there's a disconnect, because she's talking about the original idea, and you guys are referring to the site plan that was presented to us, but she wasn't at that meeting. But I think there's nothing really to be done about it at this point, right? Like, it is what it is.
Thank you.
Is there a way we could put up some of these documents?
Well, that's not true. It isn't.
On a website, and so we all have access to these documents. I know they get presented to us, months go by, a year goes by. It would be nice to have some kind of current website that had some kind of current plans that are being presented to us.
Yep.
So that
Perhaps we could have like a repository.
Where almost like a dashboard, kind of like what the park's supposed to do.
With practicing law, we have repositories, so we can go to each different individual file and pull exhibits and transcripts. So it would be nice to have it for these projects.
I think that's a really important point for this board, especially with the bond money. I don't know, Carl or Leona, is that something? Because honestly, my stack of Parks and Recreation, it's this big. I can't even organize it. It doesn't fit in the folder you guys gave me originally. I'm overwhelmed with maps and everything else. So I think that's a huge
something like a SharePoint site, Microsoft 365 at SharePoint.
Yes.
I like I said, it should be a repository with each given project having its own separate entity, and that way.
Right, a separate folder, and
absolutely.
Yeah,
everything's going.
The city uses some kind of SharePoint site.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually think that's a good idea. Although the Panthers work isn't necessarily bond money, I'll have a conversation with Joe at a later time to see what we could do as far as adding like a little caveat in one of the landing pages that we have for Holiday Park.
I think all projects, no. I mean, we have so many maps and discussions, and I think that it's getting more and more important for us to be organized since we have this bond money and the community really is looking to us for guidance. My recall's getting bad. I mean, I'm just multitasking like nobody's business. So I think that for all of the projects, if we could have a you know, landing point for us to go to and remind ourselves before our meetings, especially when we look at the agenda and we go, oh gosh, let me refresh my memory, you know, and it would help, you know, Brucie could look and say, okay, now I understand the floor plan that they discussed when I wasn't there, things like that.
Yeah, I believe that's also part of what AECOM is doing anyway.
Okay. Well, keep us posted. The sooner the better.
I want to make sure I confer with Joe. Am I correct in that, Joe?
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, we're planning on a repository, how to manage, you know, 97 projects across a whole bunch of people. Yeah, I think we should discuss how to do so efficiently, Carl, but I think it's a good idea.
Well, I don't know if it's possible. Maybe we could just have, I don't know if it's even legal to have a private one. I'm just saying what we receive at our board meetings that we're discussing, if we could re-access that instead of trying to go back through emails. You see what I'm saying? What we've been presented as a board.
Yeah, totally understand.
So
some
maybe
kind of repository.
Fiona could automatically dump in the file when she sends it to us or attaches it to email, something like that, not to put any more on your plate.
Oh, you know what? I was actually just thinking, and what I'll do is I'll make a note to have a conversation with IT and see if we could possibly put something, whether it's on Lauder Share. I think individuals can access that. Let me get with IT and see what we can do, because I like the idea.
Everything that we're given as a board, we need to be able to go back and not fishing through emails and hoping to find an attachment. Okay.
Great. How the city commission has like its agenda posted for each meeting? Like if we went right now onto the website for our board, does it list each meeting in our agenda and like every document? Like, is that already a site that has that type of stuff? Like, you know, for this commission, everything that is going to be presented to them is uploaded to the site, typically after the meeting. Is that something that our site currently has for our PRBAB board? And if not, could it? Like, could it just be, you know, at this day, this was the agenda and these were all the attachments?
Right, that's exactly what I'm referencing when speaking with IT to see if we can set something like that up.
Yeah, some kind of cloud-based system.
Yeah, I think that would be very useful for all of us. And we can stay on top of the projects better and get our questions in order. Charlie, do you need anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'll put my hand down.
Any other topics the board wants to discuss? We have no communications to the commission.
Karen, don't forget we had the Tunnel Top project presentation.
I am so sorry. You didn't stop me. I went right to the board comments. All right, I'm totally out of practice. All right, Fausto, Naldo, Brian, Benjamin, Lisa, Marie. For the Tunnel Top. I'm so sorry, you guys.
That's all right. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, board member. And yeah, I was just patiently here waiting. I'm saying, oh, maybe they forgot about us. That's no problem.
You got to start texting me.
No, we're fine anyway. I mean, we're used to this every time we go to commission meetings and other stuff.
No, I don't like to make people wait. I certainly don't want you to listen to all our conversations.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting. Okay. I got to find out about the pickleball that you guys have. Anyway. Well, good evening, board members. My name is Fausto Gomez from the Florida Department of Transportation and project manager for the Henry Kinney Tunnel Rehabilitation and the Tunnel Top Plaza project. As you know, we're here as a request from the board to present you. Basically, what we're going to present you is a shorter version of the presentation we did for this project to the public on September 24th. And then we also did the presentation to the City Commission on October 6th. And with me, I have two gentlemen I'd like to introduce you and who will be presenting and for any questions afterward. First presenting is Naldo Gonzalez. He's the consultant project manager for the tunnel rehabilitation with the company Ghana Fleming. And then followed by Brian Short with the company Millalek. He's the design consultant for the landscape and hardscape for the tunnel top plaza. So now I will turn it over to Naldo, and thank you all. Naldo, is the presentation going to be brought up by you or Brian? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I'll bring it
Thanks.
up. So hopefully you all can see it soon. Good evening, everyone. Let me know if you can. Can you all see the presentation?
No, we're not sure. Sharing screen.
Jerry, can you give him the hosting rights?
We see you, Naldo, not your presentation.
Turn off my video. How about now?
No.
Share my screen.
Jerry?
Busy now. How about now?
Yes, almost.
How about now? You see it?
We see your, there you go.
There we go.
Okay,
Yes.
you guys
There it
see
is.
the one with the notes or the regular one?
This is the regular one.
Okay, perfect. Well, good evening. Sorry about for the technical difficulty, folks. Like Fausto said, my name is Naldo Gonzalez. I'm the project manager. I'm with Ghana Fleming. I've been working with the Department of Transportation for 3 years on the tunnel rehabilitation. And this project obviously is exciting. You know, the main part of the project is the tunnel rehab, but the more exciting project part of the project is really the tunnel top project, which is exciting. It's 2 in 1, really. So I'll go quickly through my slides. We probably have 30 slides. I'll go quickly through the portion of the rehabilitation, which I don't think it's as important to this board. I think obviously the tunnel top part of it will be really the critical part and more important for those on the call today. So just to quickly start, the overall Henry Kinnick Tunnel project rehabilitation, it really is a quite bigger project. It starts all the way down from I-595 up to north to Broward Boulevard. But the heart of the project you see here in the slide is the Henry Kinnick Tunnel. And the reason why is obviously that's being rehabilitated. It's in the middle of downtown, which carries obviously US 1 traffic underneath the tunnel, the New River Park, the New River, and of course through downtown Fort Lauderdale. So it's exciting older tunnel. The main objectives of the project are threefold, and this is important. The first one, which is the FDOT project, is the rehabilitation of the tunnel to meet the latest state, federal, and local standards and guidelines for mechanical, structural, electrical, and life safety. The second part is improved safety mobility on US 1, and you'll see that in a few slides later. And then the third part is really the exciting part, and this is part of the locally funded agreement with the City of Fort Lauderdale, which is enhancing the East Los Olos Boulevard at 6th Avenue for a more livable community. Quickly, I'll talk about the actual rehabilitation. Like I mentioned before, when we rehabilitate tunnels, it's what's called NFPA 502, National Fire Protection Act 502. The tunnel is a unique structure. There's only 2 tunnels in the state of Florida. This one was built in 1960. It's quite old. So this is the first major rehabilitation. You can see some of the elements of the rehab. The tiles, some of the tiles are laminated, are being replaced. The lost spalling. The ventilation buildings are being repaired. Mechanical, the pumps, fans, lighting are being replaced, and life safety as well. It's being improved. The other second objective of the project is improving mobility on US 1. The first improvement is we're doing what's called adaptive traffic signal control. What this is at these 8 intersections, you have a new system in place that the timing of the signals will be changing based on real-time traffic. So that's going to improve traffic on along US 1 quite a bit and at those intersections. And then the other part of mobility, improving mobility, is having what we call intelligent transportation system, or ITS. What you see in the screen in front of you in white are the existing systems. And if you notice along US 1, there's a lack, there's no system out there now. So the proposed improvements when it comes to ITS is to run a brand new trunk line and provide a whole bunch of systems, whether it be cameras, warning gates as you're approaching the tunnel, arterial dynamic message signs as well. And that's all going to be fed back into what's called FTOT's transportation, Regional Transportation Management Center, where they can control the gates, they can monitor the cameras, and they can also change the signs as well. And this is the third part of the project, the exciting part, which is the city's part. And this, you see, is a picture of the intersection we're talking about. This is Southeast 6th Avenue in Las Olas. You can see the US 1. This is the north portal, the north entrance of the tunnel. Here in Las Olas is 4 lanes divided. You can see the Icon building. You can see Southeast 6th Avenue, which becomes Southeast 4th Street as it goes underneath the hotel and the parking garage. And this is where we're doing the improvements at Tunnel Top Park. So what are we looking for improvements here? So what you see in gray is the extension of the tunnel. In order to build this pedestrian plaza or park, we had to essentially extend the tunnel 117 feet to the north. It's a 2-span structure, so it's going to have a column in the center. It'll be supported by the existing walls if you've been out there now. So we'll be cutting all those walls and setting the beams in place and essentially building a bridge structure to extend the tunnel to the north. We're also raising the intersection. We're replacing bollards. We're replacing the signals. Right now is a span wire. Replacing mast arms, pedestrian lighting, and then you'll have quite a bit of decorative features when it comes to landscape and hardscape, which Brian will speak to in a minute. So the funding for the Tunnel Top Plaza is $10.6 million, which is part of the Parks bond that was approved several years ago. It's done through a local funded agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation. And a big part of it is improving the sight distance at that intersection. If you've been there, it's quite difficult to see the westbound traffic if you're going up on 6th Avenue, any traffic coming from Las Olas Boulevard. But the improvements are the enhancing of Las Olas Boulevard is constructing the new plaza 117 feet to the north. We're raising the intersection. We're reconstructing the north ventilation building. We're improving all the plaza with the Lower Ward Riverwalk Plaza, installing hardscape, landscape, and like I mentioned before, the signals will be now mast arms. We had quite a bit of outreach throughout the project from the initial concepts. The Tunnel Top Plaza is not new obviously to the city. This was first started by the DDA back in 2013, the first concept. You can see the image on the lower left-hand side. But we've had several iterations. We've worked with the city, we've worked with the local stakeholders. We've had several public meetings to get input. Like Joe mentioned, this is part of the process to get engagement from the city, from the community, from the commissioners. We had two of them in 2019. And then we had, like Fausto mentioned, we had a virtual public workshop in last month on September 24th. We had quite a bit of turnout and we had quite a few good questions for the project. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian to speak about the concept and the design of the Tunnel Top Park.
Okay, thank you, Maldo. If everybody would understand when this project came through for approval, some of the concepts on the next pages will be where the project came to life with concepts, and the images you see there is the basis of the theme of the Tunnel Top Plaza, tying the extension all the way down to the riverfront. So the focus for this is, the ebbs and flows of the estuaries and Everglades, and using those organic shapes to be able to create an appealing space not only on the ground or above. So there's a key element there that two visual opportunities are here to be enjoyed for this project. Next slide, Naldo. the inspiration on those boards back whenever this was presented were, similar projects of these that, show that flow of, contours and color and provide the dynamic changes, even utilizing the landscape as part of those visual cues and such, and using artful pieces such as fish and such. We'll have bronze mullet in the waterways to help accent areas, kind of be a little part of art, public art, but they're, little insignificant little pops of pieces that will come up into the design. Next slide, Neldo. This image here was the main intersection at Las Olas and 6, providing the original concept here, and just wanted to remind everybody of the vision of that original concept that's been provided and the evolution there. Next slide. The terrace wall areas, the vision of the stair step and multi-levels and the landscape that's provided within the 117 feet, as well as the lawn zones and such. Next slide. And then the aerial view from the parking garage down in Lower Ward, just how everything will transform and operate and coexist with all the existing features around Icon, Stranahan, Riverside Hotel, and the parking garage, and how it all functions together in creating a dynamic space for the waterfront. Next slide. The overall image provided here is the evolution of the concept into the real world of, harmonizing existing features, many comments that we've gone through for the review, and just refinements of the overall concept, how it's been, progressing through the process of the design, the dynamics of the ebbs and flows of the dynamic color changes, bring all the continuity of the plaza from the waterfront all the way up to the extension of the funnel top plaza, having opportunities in many different zones within that. We, look at that as, the key feature, the funnel top plaza being more of a event and social space, cheesecake area next to the Riverside Hotel will function similar to how it works today, but reimagined. Icon with the city and everything moving ahead with that parcel will be collectively gathered into this artful space. And then least, but not but least, the Lower Ward reinforcing the connection to the Riverwalk and providing those connections through the park. Next slide. The key features in the Lower Ward was, define a real space for events and such to coexist with the Stranahan House that utilizes this space regularly in the city, with the, the water, the water taxi launch, and then the holiday parade that's annually there. We worked at different, features within this part of that court, and the vent shaft will be a big transformation of the large space going only to the single structure. So there's a lot more, pedestrian space and defining extra spaces for that within this plaza. Next slide. The middle section is, the section that's more of the, user passive space, the restaurant space for the Riverside Hotel cheesecake, and then the Icon Plaza, transforming that more into a public space, tying everything in together, and looking at the function of the drop-off spaces and such within the curve of 6th Avenue and 4th, making a easier transition for the Stranahan House to function. Next slide. And that, not but at least here, is the tunnel top layout for this, for the multi-tiered spaces. In the original concept, you saw a little more flatter type concept with the raising and the angling of the under tunnel and everything. We've looked at a multi-terrace style design that's a little more reinforced and, you know, retaining the terracing effect in the original concept provided in the concept. So, you know, the flow and everything is, you know, tying everything visually together to create this, you know, dynamic space for events and such, to be able to be a, you know, headliner space for the arts and such. And that's kind of the part of the inspiration, is that, you know, you have the art festivals and everything annually when possible, and this is a signature space to be able to do that on the ground and be able to be enjoyed on the ground or above. So, you know, native materials is a focus because of the underlying theme of the environmental ecology. So we're using 95% of the native materials. There's a few durable materials that was coordinated with the city that they would like to see in there for just nondescript areas on the outside, but majority of the focal plant materials will be native materials. That's the end, Aldo. Next slide.
Okay, thanks, Brian. So as I mentioned before, the tunnel is eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. It was built in 1960. It was really unique for its time in two aspects. The engineering and architecture really was a masterpiece from an engineering perspective back in 1960. And it really helped the development of the area, planning and development of downtown Fort Lauderdale. So because of that, we did have a consultation with the Division of Historic Resources for the state of Florida, also before it was known as SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office. And even though the rehabilitation did not have any adverse effect, the extension of tunnel 117 feet did have an adverse effect. So what that means is we have to do several mitigation efforts for photo documentation of the tunnel. And then what you see here in the slide in front of you on the lower left-hand side is panels. We, in consultation with a DHR, they are requiring us to put what's called interpretive panels that gives a history of Fort Lauderdale, development of Fort Lauderdale. And we're working with the Stranahan House and the city of Fort Lauderdale's Historic Preservation Board to come up with what the message of those interpretive panels. Those will be placed in the lower ward, Riverwalk Park, near the north ventilation building. So that's part of the commitment. And actually, it's an agreement between the city, the Florida Department of Transportation, and the Florida Division of Historic Resources. I think that was executed just recently. I want to just touch a little bit about the traffic control. All this is great as far as designing it, but it's got to be built. Really quick, I'm just going to cover on you. This is more for US 1. The different schemes of traffic control for the rehabilitation. I'll touch at the end a little bit about Las Olas, but for a lot of you may use US 1 for the rehabilitation and the work on that. Basically, we're closing down one tube of the tunnel, and we're having the bidirectional traffic on the other tube. You can see that on scheme 1, we close a northbound, have two-way traffic on the southbound, and then we flip it to on scheme 2, we flip it to the other side, and that way we can rehabilitate completely the tunnel in these two schemes. The other schemes we're looking at is where we maintain traffic in their original location, but we do need to close a lane, whether it be the outside lane, as you see there in scheme 3, or closing the inside lane in scheme 4. We do need this for some incidental work, for maybe working on the walls of the tunnel to receive eventually the structure. And then the last scheme, I want to make sure everyone understands this will be used very limited cases on the project, is when we have complete closure of the tunnel. The reason for that is, if you're all familiar, obviously, we do not want to have any construction or setting of beams above live traffic. Obviously, we all know tragedies down south at Florida International, the pedestrian bridge. We don't want to go anywhere near that. So we need to close traffic of US 1 completely when we're setting up beams, as you see on the image on the lower left-hand side. But these will be used probably for weekend or night closures that we're going to try to limit this closures. And of course, when we have full closure of US 1, we will have detours, and you can see on this image that we are using 3rd Avenue as a detour route. This is the same detour route that's been used on the previous rehabilitational tunnel. Plus, it's also the same detour route that's used when the tunnel is closed for cleaning. That's done once a month by FDOT. There's also a pedestrian detour route because obviously there's a walkway that goes through the tunnel. I think this is my last slide. So just kind of to wrap it all up, the total construction for the rehabilitation and the tunnel top park is $26 million. You can see the breakdown of a little over 15 million for the rehab, which includes the ITS, quite a bit of work there. And then the 10.6 is part of the city's part of the local fund agreement, which is all the improvements I spoke about before. We are working towards completing the design. As a matter of fact, we are submitting what we call in the world of the FDOT, what's called bidability, which is a 90% complete set of plans this week. That will go out today. The city will have a chance to review it as well. The letting, it's when bids are open for construction. It's scheduled for May of 2021. That's currently the schedule. I think construction will probably be the end of summer, if not the summer 2021, or the beginning of fall of 2021. I think with that, if any questions, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Gary, if we can go back to where I can see if any hands are raised. All right, there we go. Let's see. Carrie, you want to ask
I just had a real quick question or a real quick comment. As someone who works like a block and a half from there, I'd love to be able to come sit at the terrace on the tunnel top park and eat lunch or something, but I would strongly encourage you to triple the number of trees that are shown in those schemes. I just, from what I'm seeing from the schematics, I'm not seeing enough or big enough trees and big enough trees to provide shade at like a noontime, lunchtime gathering time. And you can't go wrong with more trees. I mean, everything down there is hardscaped. More trees in nature would be welcome. And so I would just encourage you, if that's at all possible, to do larger trees with larger canopy and more of them. And it looks pretty cool, and I'm excited about it. Thank you.
Yeah, the large trees have a debatable of the, it being on the structure and a little bit of a challenge we have with that. And, the vision was to put larger trees on there, but after the end is the, amount of plantable space, as in, planter and everything for trees to thrive at larger, size has been, kind of limiting a little bit, unfortunately. And, we've, interspersed the planters as best as possible based on the original concept. We've actually pulled them forward and such, and as you see in the concept, it's been somewhat of a challenge and discussion. So we understand the comment, and we've always had that in the back of the mind to increase the shade value, and that the one on the west side was included, and larger palms and trees are in that for larger shadowing type shade. So
about some shade structures like we use on our parks?
There was actually some discussion of future shade ones to be in, as a next phase to be part on that. But I'll defer that to Fausto on the discussions with the city and such with that notion. So
it is one of our biggest requests across the city in our parks.
Yeah.
Charlie and then Deborah.
A couple things. I heard the word palm trees. Palm fronds tend to be missiles when they fall. So I don't know what kind of palms you plan on putting up, but you need to be concerned with what happens when the palm fronds fall. And some palm trees are nothing but trash trees and create more of a havoc than they do beautification. The other thing I'm thinking about is it looks great on paper. What kind of construction materials you're going to use that are going to be driven over by all the cars, and what's it going to look like down the road after we've had 3 million cars driving over the top of it. Is it going to be pavers? Is it going to be painted asphalt? Is it what's the long-term maintenance for the not the pedestrian areas, but the driving areas where the vehicular traffic is going to traverse the area?
Yeah, we discussed the colorization of the raised area from day one when we moved from concept to implementation. And the concrete surface of the roadway is no different than any roadway colorization if it was gray, but we're using more of an earth mid-tone for the roadway. So the colorization, if it's concrete or this color, will be the same. You'll get the lane lines, the drips of the oil and such, and there will be some regular maintenance that needs to be addressed before events and such and everything. But we're not looking at high contrasting colors in the roadway. That was a comment day one, is to minimize how much contrast is in the roadway for that. One other comment was that elimination of pavers as maintenance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was
I was going to get
our
to
paver
it.
nightmare at the Broward and Third and wherever else we're at. It turned into a nightmare. It just wasn't a good idea. So we just want to make sure that that's not planned for the future.
Yeah, the pavers, that's the first thing the city makes sure they told us is no pavers. So especially in the vehicle area. So we will not have pavers in the vehicle areas. There'll be colored concrete, and it's not going to be concrete that's painted on top. The intent is to have the color throughout the actual concrete depth, which is 8 inches.
Colored concrete.
Colored concrete, right, which is the full depth of the concrete, which is 8 inches in the vehicle area.
And they'll receive also contrasting texture as well. So
Karen, I have a couple questions too.
Okay, Deborah, you're next. I'm not sure who was speaking, but Deborah, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Are there going to be areas in the park area for people to sit and perhaps under the trees and stuff like that, so they could actually relax and enjoy the area?
That's a large focus on the design, is that each of the planters, the key planters throughout the lower and mid, not focusing on the terrace at this moment, all have a linear style, serpentine style type seat wall up against the planters. As much volume as seating you see today is not really reduced, it's just reimagined. So all the little circular ones you see out there today is a longer, more cohesive design and collectively put together instead of the individual ones that are designed today. Laura Ward, putting more focus on more seating area, wait for people to wait on the water taxi. We saw that every seating area was at least 100 feet away from the water taxi, and everybody had to kind of sit in precarious spaces waiting on that. I actually went out and observed that while I came up with some final design items for functionality down there. So there is areas that are provided. We're actually including a smaller seating wall that's a little bit closer to the Stranahan house. So whenever there's visitors like the school visits and such,
right,
they can all gather and sit and wait to load the bus and such, instead of sitting on the hot bus. So
excellent. This is directed towards the tunnel itself, the construction of the tunnel itself. How long do you anticipate some of these closures to take? Being as the federal highway is a main artery, they can be quite a hassle going into downtown. So how long do you anticipate?
Well, we're just getting into it now. The overall project duration is about 2 to 2.5 years. Now we're working with the Florida Department of Transportation. We want to include what's called bonus clauses or incentive clauses to accelerate the project. The main closures you will have for a good majority of the project would be when you close a bound. So you'll always have, for the most part, one lane of US 1 open in each direction. So you'll close like I said before, the north tube, when you have the south tube open, and then you'll flip it. Those will be probably the one you'll see most of the time. And then after that, you'll see the one where they'll close either the inside lane or the outside lane of US 1. The one you'll see the least of is the full closure of the tunnel, which requires a detour. That's going to be probably maybe 4 or 5 weekend closures for setting up the beams, for constructing what we call the portal wall, the lettering and all that stuff. But that will be probably 4 or 5 weekends. You know, it really depends on the construction, the contractor schedule. You know, we'll work with the city. We've already had a couple meetings with the city, Broward County, emergency responders. So we're going to limit that phase. But for a good 2 years, you'll have US 1 basically down to 1 lane in each direction, whether it be on one side or in 1 lane of the respective sides.
Thank you.
Charlie, I see your hand up, but was there another female that was trying to talk?
Hi, Karen, it's Joanne. I had some questions.
All right, I thought so, Joanne. Go ahead, and then Charlie.
Hi, yeah, I was just wondering, we have 1,800 square feet of etched pavers and pavers to be etched on Riverwalk. Are those going to stay in place?
Yes, those areas have been provided within the cheesecake at the sitting area of the Serpentine. So there is, soldier course spans similar that are out there in the etchings, as well as I believe right now that's a total of 1,500 square feet. So we're matching roughly what you have. And we actually physically went out and counted how many you have etched, and there's 621 actual pavers already etched. And, we're just kind of needing that bonus number of what's been sold, not etched. So, I think we're right on the money of replacing the same space, as well as we're creating a short extension down in the, trailhead for the Riverwalk as well. So there's opportunities at that trailhead as well for future, purchases of donor bricks and such. So we've heard the Riverwalk loud and clear and provided a good alternative design for it, and it would be very complementary to what is provided today. So the ones that have purchased bricks get the same value of what they purchased.
Okay, I also wondered about the Riverwalk lights that have the banner poles on them. Are we going to be able to save all of those?
We are retaining every one of them except one that's adjacent to the vent tower, and that will actually be relocated down by the water taxi area to provide more light in that zone.
Okay, but we will still keep the same amount then?
Yes,
right.
That was heard loud and clear as well, and it was actually a cost savings measure on the project that we retain those and work around them.
All right, thank you.
Charlie?
Yes, to the seating, are these planters going to be similar to what we have on Fort Lauderdale Beach with the wall that's got to be painted from starting one day and going all the way to the end and starting all over again? Or are they going to be some kind of concrete material that won't look dirty, won't have to be painted?
We're looking at providing a veneer of the white Portland cement on the vertical and a precast seating on the top, just a 4-inch simple segmental piece for those. So the durability has that. There'll be a few tunnel features that, structurally that will have to have paint on them and stucco, but it's very minimal. And we're trying to get all the, the pedestrian focused sitting areas and seat walls in the fashion of, natural material.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it a fun fact that this was the first public tunnel in the state of Florida?
It sure is. Sure was. Yeah, sure is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before the Port of Miami. So absolutely.
Before what?
Before the Port of Miami. The Port of Miami. It was the first publicly operated tunnel in the state of Florida.
Okay.
It was pretty controversial as well because I think it was like a 48-52 split on voting that people wanted to keep the movable bridge or the tunnel. So it's barely squeaked by back in 1959. Pretty interesting history to it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Any thoughts on public restrooms for all these people? No.
No. I don't think that never came up. At least.
Is that not a concern? I mean, I guess they'll just be going into the local restaurants and, just a thought. Okay, I apologize again to the Tunnel Top panelists or presenters that I skipped over you. I'm so sorry. Any other comments? Since I already went into the board comments.
Carrie, are you shaking your head because of the concern about homeless using the bathrooms? Is that what you're shaking your head about, or just the what the condition of the bathrooms would be like?
Can't hear you, Carrie.
Can't hear you.
I wasn't trying to get political about it, but
No. That would be to me that would be a real concern.
That would be a concern. The other concern I have is we already went significantly over budget on this, and to add another element would be more over budget, which is actually one thing. And when we talk about our tracker, is one thing I wanted to bring up is I really like this Parks Bond tracker we have, but I'd love it if we also had a column showing how much was originally budgeted for each item, so we can keep track. Because on each of these items, not to get off topic, and I'll stop talking in a second, but on each of these items, we have gone over what was originally allocated. So like if you look at the project list that's attached to the actual resolution approving the bond that passed, like there's a certain amount allocated for Tunnel Top. We increased it. And so I think a column showing the amount that was originally allocated would be an important column, because each time, this was the point I was making when I voted against the giving the extra money to the swim center, is that each time we go over budget, each time we increase the budget of an item, we are taking that money away from a project that just hasn't come to us yet. And so it's kind of like a first come, first serve bias, right? Like eventually.
No. They're not. The original money that
I'm sorry.
Okay.
The original money of $10 million is coming out of the parks. The other money is coming from elsewhere, not Parks Bond.
Okay. Well, on some of these items, we certainly, on some of these items, we did increase the Parks Bond allocation. And if I'm wrong, then that would be all the more reason to have that column showing, like, in the original Parks Bond, the one that's attached to the resolution passed, all $200 million is accounted for. And I don't mean like detail by detail. What I mean is like $20 million for Holiday Park, $10 million for Tunnel Top, $35 million for land acquisition, like something like those big chunks, so that you can see if you increase the amount that goes to a particular thing, that you can see, like, okay, we're running a bit of a deficit here, as opposed to as compared to what the original allocation was.
Carrie, can I clarify that I wasn't suggesting that we donate money for restrooms? I was just inquiring about if they had considered one, and I agree with Charlie as well. I just wanted to know his thoughts. And also the bond money that's donated per project isn't just increased without our overseeing it. So that's in our control. That's how we vote.
Right. No, I hear what you're saying is how we vote. But like, for example, I'm not seeing it on here, but we did vote to increase the allocation to the aquatic center, didn't we?
Not that I remember.
Yes,
we were higher.
Yes, we did.
What happened there is the city should have considered the south building, which was part of the aquatic center to begin with. So what they did is they tried to shuffle in a project without having it completely renovated. So you can't renovate an aquatic center and have a building that is 60 years old that is used as for admin and facilities for the athletes. That was the problem with us. So it wasn't really that we allocated additional funds to it. The project wasn't completely renovated in its entirety. It came to us partially renovated, and that's what we needed to do. We needed to correct the problem.
My only point is this, and I'm not saying like pro or con one way about anything. What I'm saying is we had $200 million, and that $200 million, if you look at the list of projects attached to the bond when it passed, all $200 million of the $200 million was allocated to certain things. We have increased the allocation to certain projects. So for example, the aquatic center is getting more now than it was scheduled to get under that attachment to the bond when passed. That's fine, we can make that decision. What I'm saying though is we need a column showing us how many times we've done that, because if we give an extra million to this project, an extra million to that project, an extra million to that project, eventually, as you get down the list of projects, you run into a project that was allocated $5 million in the attachment to the bond that passed, but you've now allocated that $5 million, an extra million to Tunnel Top, an extra million to the aquatic center, an extra 500 here, an extra 500 there, and that 5 million is not there anymore. So just like anytime you make a choice, you're making, it's a trade-off, right? You're gonna give a bit more to this project. As part of our decision-making process, we need to have some concept of where that money's coming from, because we're not increasing the bond amount. And every dime of that $200 million was allocated. So for example, if someone came to us and said like, hey, we want to increase the land acquisition fund from 35 million to 45 million, I think I might actually be in favor of that. I think acquiring land is huge, but we need to know where that 10 million is coming from, because there's not an extra 10 million out there. Like, it's coming from some project. It was promised somewhere, and we're taking it and moving it over here in just a column that just shows how much was originally allocated to each project, and then how much is now being budgeted for that project would help us understand that.
I don't disagree.
Karen?
Yes, Brucie? I'm having trouble hearing you.
No, how to raise my hand.
You can't raise your hand. I'm having trouble hearing you.
It doesn't work on this phone.
Okay. Can you speak?
I really want this to be clarified as well, because I'm sorry?
Brucie, your bandwidth is really off.
Hello?
Brucie, we're not able to hear you. You sound like you're in slow motion. Can you turn your Wi-Fi on?
Can you hear me now?
Not well.
Okay, I had asked, huh?
We can't hear you. Brucie,
What?
can you turn on your Wi-Fi or something? You would just
Hello?
Okay, go ahead, try again.
You may have to talk directly into the phone.
We heard that one.
Can you hear? I am. I'm talking right into the phone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it had to do with your
No?
connection. It had to do with your connection. Go ahead, Brucie.
Okay. I had asked this question the other day because I did listen to the presentation last week, and I was assured that just the money that we voted for, which was $10 million or $8 million or something like that for this project, was the only part of the parks bond money. Please correct me if they said that wrong or that I was told wrong.
No.
Because they just said it was 28 million, but we're not paying for all of that.
No, we clarified
with the parks bond.
You can see right here.
Okay, all right, all right. Just as long as that's understood.
What was
I can't see anything.
Okay, sorry, I apologize. But what Leona sent you,
sorry.
the running scale on what the bond expenditures is. In the 26 million, because it falls into the historic eligibility and other reasons, they came up with the 26,000. We did not contribute more from the bond money than we agreed to.
Can I clarify that for a second?
Right, okay, thank you.
If you don't mind. The project originally was a rehabilitation. The rehabilitation is, and the city's portion, which is the Tunnel Top, is totally, the whole thing is 26 million. So no, the city's not contributing 20. Their portion of the 26 million is $10.6 million, which is the LFA. So it's not the 26.
Okay.
It's the city's
Great.
portion.
Thank you.
Yes, okay.
Okay. Anything else? Do you have your hand up, Carrie? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't. Carrie, are you? Go ahead. I don't. Carrie, is your hand up?
Can you hear me?
Unmute, there you go.
Okay. So just this is like the wrap up, like general talk, right? I'll be super brief. I just want to make sure I'm not off.
Tunnel Top, we appreciate your presentation. It was awesome. We're really excited about it. If no one else has questions, then we'll just go on back to the board comments that I started with an hour ago.
Okay, so my comment was, I just wanted to say, you know, just very quickly, you had mentioned that pickleball is more about George English than Holiday, but in the presentation, we did see a presentation that showed potential sites in Holiday Park for a tournament center and lots of places where you'd be taking what's currently nature and building more pickleball. And so it is my understanding it may impact Holiday Park. And again, I play pickleball, I like it. So just in that vein, what I want to bring up is, and I know I'm a broken record on this issue, but like we have the Riverwalk Center parking garage. Like you could take which the city owns. You could take that parking garage, the rooftop deck that's absolutely flat, and you could take the top portion of that. You could probably build, I don't know, you could probably build 10, 15 pickleball courts up there, and you're not taking and paving nature to build hardscape pickleball courts. You're taking hardscape parking spots that really don't get used that much, and then you're putting in pickleball right in downtown, and people could easily drive there. It's a parking garage. You drive there, you park, you walk up top, you play pickleball. You could do the same thing with the county's parking garage right immediately on the south bank of the river, right next to New River Landing. Like that's just for jury parking, right? But that's done at 5 o'clock. Like you could put up there pickleball courts with where, you know, during the daytime it's parking, and in the night you come in and you just assemble, you know, put in the nets real quick, and voila, you have pickleball courts. Like I know it's not as simple as that, but buying new land or paving over existing green park space is not simple either. And those would be really good solutions to provide, you know, you already have lights up there. They're well lit. They're already hardscape. They're not being used. They're right in downtown. And, you know, we're going to have to be creative. We don't have more space. And I think those would be really good options in terms of a way that you could provide more space with pickleball without turning park nature space into hardscape.
I don't think there's been that much conversation on the green space turning. The property that they're talking about, George English, were the prior roller rinks, possibly the basketball court. And they're also talking about, you know, what Alan Zeman had brought up with using the school property as well. So there's tennis courts and things like that. I mean, there's so many options in all of these discussions. You know, I don't think that the first mode is to buy property and turn green space into pickleball courts. I don't think that's the main drive, but I like the idea of the parking garage at the top, but they do need it during the day. Pickleball plays all day long and into the night. So was somebody else trying to talk that can't raise their hand? Joanne or Brucie? No. Carrie, did you have something else to say about that?
Oh, no, I think for Riverwalk Center, you could play all day. I think you could put sunshades up there and you absolutely could play all day. Again, when I'm talking about turning park space into hardscape, again, this is where having that repository would be really useful. The presentation, when the pickleball people came to us, there was a presentation that showed, you know, turning parts of Holiday Park that are currently grass into pickleball courts or into a pickleball stadium. And one of the spots really hit home for me because it was over in the grass area that's currently used as parking, but that we in the Victoria Park area have always been promised that as soon as they build a garage, that will become a passive use or an area where maybe like the splash pad or the big giant playground, or maybe like a community hangout, open field type thing. And so when I saw there was a proposal, there was an idea even to just, you know, turn that into a more concrete, it just kind of a little bit at home. And I like pickleball and I want to provide space for pickleball. And I think that, you know, having a use on top of the Riverwalk Center would be really useful.
This is where one of the benefits of having the project manager is that this is everything they're going to evaluate, where to spend the money, where to put the projects. Mary, did you have? Mary?
Yes, I can get Carrie's being a little bit concerned because I remember that whole pickleball presentation too, and it just seemed like anywhere they could fit in those courts, man, they were putting the squares on all the Holiday Park, and I get that. Being that George English Park is practically my next door neighbor, you know, I am aware that in George English, there are many places where they could put those courts. And I think maybe that should be more the focus than adding a lot of cement to Holiday Park or other places. So I just want to say to Carrie, I get why you might be a little concerned about Holiday Park, because I saw that too, and it's like, wow, that's just like, let's make this a big puzzle and stick these in where we can. But there is room in George English Park where there already is cement, and it'll just depend on, you know, how it gets managed. So just
that's what we have our new project manager. I really have faith that this is going to move forward to everybody's best benefit.
Well, and I just think that we should be trying to activate those rooftops. You don't need, I mean, rooftop parking, like, let's be innovative. In every Miami Heat game, the cutaway shot is they show the people playing soccer on top of that rooftop soccer thing. And everyone's like, oh, that's so cool. Well, let's have cool, exciting elements. Let's be a cool city. Let's have rooftop pickleball instead of rooftop parking. You don't need the spaces where the helipad is. You don't. I work right there. I look down. Those spaces are not filled. You could easily take at least one half of that, if not the whole thing, and turn those into something cool. Yes.
Carrie, I'm totally in agreement with you, and it's been my idea for a while too. So yes, absolutely.
Karen, you're muted.
Okay, thank you. Any other old business or new business we need to bring up before we call it a night?
Karen, could I ask one question? I'm still confused in terms of how to contact the board if we have an idea, want to share something.
I think
I thought that we could write an email.
Everything should go to Leona.
Say that again?
Everything should go to Leona. And Leona can share it with us.
But
Leona,
can it, I mean.
I can't hear you if you're speaking, Brucie.
I'm not speaking. I'm waiting for Leona to say yes or no.
Okay.
I mean, so if I wanted to give an idea like exactly what Carrie was saying, I have to write Leona only.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
And then she'll send it out to the board?
Do you put it on the agenda to discuss, Leona, or how does that work once you receive it?
Once I receive it, we determine if it's something that we will need to place on the next agenda so that we can further discuss it there at that time. But no communication is supposed to be shared amongst yourselves. So send it to me and then I will distribute to the staff and everybody else.
And if Leona sends us anything, we cannot reply to that email. We have to wait for our meeting to have discussion. You can reply to Leona personally, but not to all. Okay. Does that answer your question, Brucie?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Great meeting. Lots of information. Does anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn the meeting.
I second it.
Okay. Motion carries. Have a great night. I'll talk to you guys in December. Charlie, you okay?
Oh, well, I'm just going to say I hope to see you all personally.
The recording has stopped.
That would be awesome.
All right.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
bye
you.
now.
Yes, that would be.
Yep.
Have a great night,
Take care.
everybody. Bye.